She's just the intern. Let her fetch the coffee. That's what Colonel Myers says without even looking at me. His voice cuts across the hangar like the hiss of a cockpit seal breaking sharp, dismissive and loud enough to make the whole room laugh. I stand there dead center in Bay 3 at Craven Air Base,
Access
hands
denied.
at my sides, clipboard held just a little tighter. The hangar smells like burnt turbine oil, sun-warmed aluminum, and chewing gum. Everything echoes here, so when they laugh it bounces. I don't flinch. I don't blink. I just let the words settle on me like dust on a flight deck. Because if I respond too soon, the game ends too early, and I didn't come here for a fair game. My name is Arden Blake. I'm 32, and I've flown aircraft that haven't even been officially acknowledged by the Department of Defense. I've dropped out of radar over Iran, danced with typhoons off the coast of Wales, and tested stealth software while half the Pentagon was still debating its budget. But today, I'm wearing cheap canvas work pants and a civilian-issue ID that says Engineering Systems Liaison, Contractor Level 2. No rank, no wings, no truth. Just another shadow walking the halls. To them, I'm no one. To me, I'm exactly where I need to be. Colonel Myers tosses his stylus onto the digital board and claps once. All right back to it. Some of us actually fly. The junior officers smirk and disperse tight clusters of swagger sarcasm and checklist fatigue. I watch them move, cataloging their movements, their patterns. I've been here 6 weeks. 6 weeks of pretending I don't know how to fly. 6 weeks of watching them skip pre-flight checks, falsify maintenance logs, and haze junior cadets who ask too many questions. 6 weeks of Colonel Myers acting like Craven Base is his personal coliseum, and every woman under 35 is either a threat or an errand girl. My job, at least on paper, is to observe integration efficiency between new AI diagnostics and human maintenance teams. In reality, I've been embedded by Night Raven, a Tier 1 Shadow Ops unit, tasked with rooting out systemic rot in high-clearance aviation divisions. My assignment isn't to report, it's to witness, to gather, assess, and trigger authorized exposure protocol if the toxicity reaches operational threat level. It has, and I'm done observing. 5 minutes after Myers dismisses the squad, I walk to the side exit and tap my comms device once. Encrypted ping. No voice. Just a pre-cleared signal. 74 seconds later, every head in the hangar turns as the air changes. There's a sound deep low and wrong for a sunny afternoon. It's not the rumble of a cargo jet or the pitchy shriek of a trainer. It's denser, like thunder being held underwater. And then, the shadow arrives. An F-35B Lightning II drops into view just beyond the edge of the hangar. It hovers low motionless, its lift fan humming like a giant inhaling. Someone gasps. Another drops their wrench. Phones come out. "What the hell, who's flying today?" one of the cadets mutters. "There's nothing on the board, no exercise scheduled, no test flight approved, but the belly of the jet flashes 3 white strobes. Call sign Nightshade. The reaction is immediate. Nightshade's real. I thought she was ghost protocol. There's no way Colonel Myers storms toward the line barking, "Who the hell authorized a demo flight without my clearance?" I step forward before anyone else can. Calm. Even. Every step like a countdown. Myers turns face red with confusion. He stares at me baffled. "Where do you think you're going?" I stop at the base of the ladder as the jet lowers its canopy. Then I pull off my contractor badge and drop it at his feet. "Some of us actually fly, sir." Silence. You could hear the wind outside. You could hear his ego cracking. Then I climb, rung by rung, into the cockpit that was coded to recognize my biometric signature even in sleep. As the harness seals and the HUD lights flicker to life, I look down at the men who laughed now, staring up like children meeting a myth. And I say over open comms, "This is Captain Arden Blake, USAF Night Raven Division. Your audit is complete." The jet lifts. Colonel Myers stumbles back. My call sign flashes again beneath me, Nightshade. Because I didn't come here to be liked. I came here to end what men like him built on silence, and I just dropped the hammer from 30 feet above his head. I was 8 years old the first time I stood on a runway. My dad, Master Sergeant Blake, was a flight line tech at Edwards Air Force Base. The kind of man who didn't speak unless he had something to say, and when he did, it came out clean, calm, and final. He let me hold a torquey wrench once while he checked a fuel coupling on a Thunderbird F-16. I remember the smell of grease and hot metal. I remember the dust, the roar of jet engines, and the way no one looked at my dad like he was small, even though he wasn't an officer. He used to say, "You want respect in this world, kiddo. You fly straight, speak when it counts, and always finish what you start." I've tried to live that way, even when the world didn't want me to. Especially then. I earned my pilot's license before I could legally rent a car. Air Force Academy by 19. Top of my class. No shortcuts, no favors. I fought for every hour in the sky, every seat in the simulator, every chance to prove I belonged. But I was a woman. And in aviation, especially combat stealth, you don't just have to be twice as good. You have to be unbreakable. Even then, it wasn't enough. My first deployment was to Bagram as part of an experimental drone integration squad. I was good, too good. And when one of my male co-pilots made a fatal decision that cost us a recon drone and almost clipped a transport, I reported it. He said I was emotional, that I panicked. The review board sided with him. I didn't lose my commission, but I lost trust. From peers, from command, from myself. They transferred me to logistics under the guise of special reassignment. It was code for exile. But someone noticed. A woman named Commander Imani Ross, director of Night Raven, a black-tier shadow division tasked with exposing systemic failure in high-value units. She reached out through a back channel. Said, "I don't need you to be liked. I need you to be accurate." I didn't hesitate. I joined. They trained me to fade to embed to listen better than I spoke. And more importantly, they gave me the one thing no other division ever did, permission to finish what I start. 6 months ago, they handed me my latest assignment. Craven Air Base, Colorado, Strike Unit 204, Commanding Officer Colonel Nathaniel Myers. Publicly, Myers is respected, decorated, efficient. Privately, he's a king, ruling with charm, intimidation, and a veneer of excellence that doesn't hold up under scrutiny. Night Raven flagged his unit for unreported safety incidents, falsified simulator results, gender-based hazing retention drop-offs among female cadets. But no whistleblowers would speak. No documentation stuck. Everything was hearsay and redacted before it reached review boards. They needed eyes on the ground, real eyes. Mine. The cover story was elegant. I was to pose as an engineering liaison contractor from a civilian oversight group working with drone AI integration. Enough jargon to be ignored. Enough legitimacy to move between units. And the best part, they assumed I didn't belong the second I walked in. Not because of my resume, but because of my face. Colonel Myers introduced himself on my first day with a handshake that lasted too long and a smile that said, "Don't make trouble." He used my first name in meetings, called me sweetheart by week 2, assigned me to shadow-broken drone diagnostics for 3 weeks straight, even though my credentials could have qualified me to teach half the squad. The others followed suit, the quiet smirks, the closed doors, the jokes when they thought I wasn't listening. I documented everything. Week 4, I caught a maintenance officer pencil-whipping a drone's pre-flight log. I flagged it. The next day, my ID card wouldn't open the secure SIM room. Week 5, I reported a procedural failure that left a cadet exposed during a vertical landing drill. No one responded. The cadet was quietly discharged for health concerns. Then, they moved my desk into the storage closet behind Bay 2. But here's the thing about being written off. They stop watching you, and that's when you start winning. Every SIM transcript, every maintenance oversight, every suspicious transfer. I logged it all, synced to an offline relay that beamed back to Night Raven at intervals only I knew. By week 6, the operation was ready to transition. They gave me a green light for Operational Reveal Protocol Alpha, meaning I could legally unmask my identity if doing so would directly preserve mission integrity and pilot safety. Translation: I had the go code, and I knew exactly how to use it. So I waited. Waited until the morning Myers made his last mistake. Called me just the intern in front of 24 witnesses. Dismissed me like I was decoration. And then I called the jet. because when someone thinks they've clipped your wings, there's no sweeter sound than the roar of your own arrival. The day before the F-35 descended, I almost walked. Not because I couldn't handle it, but because I could feel myself becoming numb. Not the useful kind of numb you learn in training, the dangerous kind. The kind that sinks in when you're surrounded by people who look right through you, when your reports vanish, when your warnings are rewritten, when your expertise is treated like background noise in a world tuned to hear only male voices in flight suits. That morning started like every other. I reviewed the drone diagnostics, reflagged the same safety concerns from last week, and sat through a debrief where my presence wasn't acknowledged once not even with eye contact. I wasn't invisible. I was deliberately ignored, and that stings more. Because it means they saw me. They just didn't care. Colonel Myers had gathered the squad for another rah-rah session about readiness stats. A show for the clipboard watchers. He stood in front of the projector like he was auditioning for a leadership poster. Best metrics in the Western Command, he said proudly. Fastest drone turnaround time in the country. I wanted to stand up right then, pull the real stats from my tablet, show them what I'd been logging, skipped inspections, redacted malfunctions. At least 3 training accidents hidden under fitness discharges. But I stayed silent, because I knew it wouldn't matter. They'd just say I was overstepping. Again. It wasn't the first time I'd been in this position. Back in Bagram, I flagged a comms glitch in the recon drone interface. My CO told me it wasn't urgent. 3 days later, we lost the feed mid-operation. A ground team went in blind. 2 soldiers died. No one took responsibility. I never forgot their names, Spencer and Diaz. I never forgot the sound of the radio going dead, or the silence that followed. After that, I learned to document everything. Quietly, precisely. Justice doesn't come with shouting, it comes with receipts. But at Craven, the patterns were worse. Reckless drills, skewed performance data. One cadet was forced to fly despite a failed sim test just to meet a quota Myers bragged about to his superiors. And when I raised it to his face, he smiled and said, "If you wanted to matter around here, sweetheart, you should have earned some stripes." That was when something broke in me. Not my resolve, my patience. That night, I went back to my off-base housing, unlocked the secondary relay tablet, and reviewed the last 6 weeks of logs. Everything was there. Video clips audio from closed-door hazing, access logs showing illegal overrides, command notes covering up failed equipment trials, more than enough for a full takedown. I looked at my own reflection in the dark window. My jaw was clenched, my spine straight. But my eyes, tired. Tired of playing small. Tired of waiting for men like Myers to fall under their own weight. Tired of being right and still being erased. I thought of my father, of how he used to come home with his hands covered in grease but never once treated my mother like less because she wasn't military. He told me once flight isn't about who sees you. It's about how you move when no one's looking. I wrote those words in my flight journal the day I graduated. Now they were the only reason I hadn't broken. The turning point came in the form of a kid named Ray. Young cadet, brilliant mind, female, new. She caught me by the lockers after hours when no one was around. "I saw what you wrote in the drone report," she said, "about the feedback loop in the AI system." "You were right. The drone that crashed last week, it wasn't operator error." I looked at her carefully. "Why are you telling me this?" She hesitated. "Because I want to last, and if I stay silent like the others, I won't." Her eyes said what her voice didn't help me. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. Myers wasn't just silencing me. He was silencing every woman who came after me. Every cadet who dared to be more than a mascot. Every tech who spoke up one time too many. Every future pilot who might never get clearance because she bruised some colonel's ego. This wasn't just a mission. It was a reckoning. I didn't need more evidence. I didn't need more time. I needed altitude. So I activated the embedded protocol through the relay device. Night Raven's response came within minutes, reveal authorized. Full discretion granted, equipment en route. I spent that night pacing, not with nerves, with purpose. I laid out my gear like it was a ritual flight suit, pressed biometric gloves, synced helmet case unlocked with the 4-digit code no one else had ever used. I slept 3 hours, woke at 500, ate toast with no appetite, and walked onto the base like I had nothing to lose. Because that was the secret, wasn't it? They already took everything they could. What they didn't know, I had air superiority. And by the time the sun reached Hangar 3, they'd be staring straight into it. I knew I was right. I had proof. I had clearance. I had Night Raven behind me. And yet, that morning, as I stood outside the hangar in the sharp light of dawn, I felt something I hadn't expected doubt. Not in the mission. Not in the data. In myself. Because what if it didn't matter? What if all the logs and all the footage and all the bold silent steps I'd taken simply disappeared the same way I had into the walls of an institution built to filter out anyone who didn't speak its language? I stood there watching the flag flutter at the end of the runway. The base was waking up, cadets jogging in formation, the low hum of turbines warming up in the distance, coffee carts rolling past, mechanics dragging cables, officers in dress blues laughing at something I'd never be invited to hear. And for a moment, it was like watching a world I'd been invited to, but not allowed to live in. Inside, Colonel Myers was giving his usual Friday morning motivational nonsense. He always stood a little too tall, shoulders back, like he thought he'd been born for command. He spoke in bullet points and metaphors. Steel in your spine, fire in your blood. He loved that line. When I stepped into the back of the room, no one noticed. Just as expected. I slid into the corner behind a rack of unused helmets. My hands were steady. My heart wasn't. Myers gestured to a series of glowing stats on the wall screen. See that 97% readiness? That's our number. That's Craven's mark. We don't fail. We lead. He paused for effect. And we don't need interns to teach us how to do our jobs. Laughter. They didn't even look back to see if I was there, because in their eyes I was gone already, and for a second I believed them. Maybe it would have been easier to disappear. Let Night Raven quietly handle it. Let the system spin on and hope that exposure trickled into real reform. But then I remembered Ray, how small her voice had sounded, how big her courage had been. She was still here, watching, waiting. And what would happen to her if I left the way I came invisible? That's when the hangar doors opened, and the sound broke through. At first, they didn't register it, too wrapped in Myers' words, but then came the shadow, long and dark across the concrete. Low, measured, perfect. One by one, heads turned. A mechanic dropped a wrench. Someone's coffee splashed across their boots. The F-35 Lightning II hovered just above the tarmac, smooth, centered, silent in its warning, and then it flashed. Call sign, Nightshade. Myers froze mid-sentence. One of the younger cadets whispered, "Wait. Nightshade is real," another answered. "I thought that was just a prototype. Who's flying that?" No one answered, because I was already walking, out of the shadows. Straight down the center aisle of the hangar, every boot step echoed. I didn't need a spotlight. The jet was the spotlight. Myers turned slowly. His face was pale, confused. He opened his mouth. I beat him to it. "I believe you requested coffee, sir." I held up the helmet my own matte black with the Night Raven insignia etched into the side, then dropped it into my hands and pulled the suit bag from behind the storage crate. He blinked. "What is this?" I looked him dead in the eye. "Your audit, conducted by Captain Arden Blake, USAF, Night Raven Command." A ripple of silence. The air changed. Not the kind of silence they gave me when I was invisible. This was different. This was recognition. Even fear. I walked past him, unzipped the bag, and stepped into the flight suit right there in front of them. The crowd parted. No one laughed, because there's something deeply disarming about watching the person you erased turn into someone the entire sky salutes. I climbed the ladder, buckled the harness, closed the canopy. The HUD bloomed into view. Nightshade active pilot ID verified. Blake A mission status open. Below, Myers shouted something into his comms. It didn't matter, because two black SUVs had just pulled up on the other side of the runway, and out stepped two representatives from the Department of Defense's Inspector General office. They moved fast, not rushed, deliberate, They didn't look at me. They didn't have to. I had already done my part. Inside the cockpit, I released the brakes, lifted gently, hovered just long enough, then turned once over the hangar. Slow and clean. So everyone would see. Everyone who ever laughed. Everyone who ever looked through me. Everyone who ever thought quiet meant weak. And I spoke one final line over the bass frequency, "Dismiss me again, and I'll show you what a woman with altitude can really do." Then I vanished into the blue. Altitude has a way of clarifying everything. The moment Craven Base disappeared beneath the clouds, something in me shifted. The tension I'd worn like body armor for weeks cracked and fell away. My breath came easier. My pulse steadied. I wasn't just airborne. I was free. I circled once over the northern ridge before heading toward the classified landing zone 30 miles east, a Night Raven outpost known only as Vector 9. It's not on any map, just coordinates a cold strip of tarmac and a row of buried concrete bunkers. I'd been there once during simulation drills. Now it would be my debrief zone. The flight was silent except for the hum of the engine and the faint hiss of pressure seals adjusting to altitude. No chatter, no orders, no apologies. That was the part I hadn't expected. The silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned. When I landed, Commander Imani Ross was waiting at the edge of the runway, her arms crossed wind tugging at the edge of her dark trench. I stepped down, unhooked my helmet, and met her gaze. She didn't smile. She didn't clap. She said only this, "You did it clean." I nodded. Did they believe it? She shrugged. Doesn't matter. They saw it. That's enough. We walked together into the debrief chamber, a windowless underground room lined with tactical monitors and case files. A single metal chair sat beneath the overhead light. It always reminded me of an interrogation room, but with better coffee. She dropped a tablet in front of me. Full system snapshot. Every log video and flagged incident you submitted. Confirmed, archived, and escalated to OIG and DAF command review. I scrolled through the evidence, each file a moment of disrespect, dismissal, or deliberate sabotage. All of it time-stamped, categorized, permanent. I looked up. "Will Myers be discharged pending review?" she said. "But with the press interest, he won't be landing anywhere anytime soon." I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt still, not numb, just centered, because what I'd done wasn't revenge. It wasn't victory. It was necessary. Later that night, I sat alone in the outpost's rec room staring at the call sign stenciled onto my flight suit, Nightshade. A name born from silence, from shadows, from being underestimated until I decided to end the guessing. And for the first time, I wondered, what now? I could take another mission. Night Raven would have one waiting. They always did, or I could vanish again. Change names, stations, units. Another base, another facade. But I didn't want to disappear anymore. I wanted to be seen. I opened my comms file and typed a message I hadn't considered before. To Night Raven Ops HQ subject proposal. Initiating concept for an internal mentorship program within stealth divisions. Emphasis on retention ethics and invisible leadership designed specifically for female pilots and cadets. Call it ghost flight. We don't need to be loud. We just need to last. Captain A. Blake. I stared at it for a long time before hitting send. 3 days later, I got the reply. Approved. I returned to Craven Air Base 1 week later. Not in a jet, not undercover. In uniform. Real rank. Real name. The look on the admin clerk's face when she saw my credentials was almost comical. Like watching someone realize their TV remote is also a nuclear launch device. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. I was there to meet Ray. We sat in the shade behind the old drone hangar. She brought coffee. I brought truth. I told her what I was, what I'd done, who I'd flown for. Her mouth hung open for a full 10 seconds. Then she said, "You're her." I just nodded. She blinked. "You don't look like you want credit." "I don't," I said. "I want you to stay alive. I want you to stay smart. And I want you to stay in this." She swallowed, then whispered, "Then teach me." That's when I knew what my next mission really was. Not just flying, not just exposing, guiding. Over the next month, I began crafting a curriculum. Not official, not wide scale. Just one cadet at a time. I called it Shadow Class. We met in off-duty hangars, after hours, quiet talks, simulator sessions that weren't logged, lessons in knowing when to speak and when to wait, in how to listen without absorbing, in how to document everything. We didn't teach combat, we taught survival, and strategy, and how to weaponize silence. Ray wasn't the only one. They came slowly, girls who'd heard the story, who knew the call sign, who didn't need proof. All they needed was permission to stay powerful in the dark. And I gave it to them. Because that's what Nightshade is. Not a name, not a pilot, not a jet. It's a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous thing in any room is the person you never bothered to see. I thought the confrontation was over. I thought the hangar scene, the jet, the call sign flashing across the sky that was the crescendo, the strike, the final turn. But the real confrontation wasn't that moment. It came weeks later without an audience. It came with a knock on the glass. I was inside the newly issued Night Raven training module at Andrews Air Force Base, setting up a second-phase leadership drill for Shadow Class candidates. Ray was outside finishing a sim run with another cadet. I was reviewing her stats when I saw the reflection of a figure in the glass door behind me. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. I turned. Colonel Nathaniel Myers, or rather former colonel. He wasn't in uniform, just jeans and a collared shirt. Civilian now. His posture had changed, shoulders still squared, but not with pride, with memory. And exhaustion. I opened the door and said nothing. He didn't wait for an invitation. He stepped inside like a man visiting a tomb. "I didn't come to fight," he said. "Good," I replied, folding my arms. He glanced around the room, took in the monitors, the training logs. He saw Ray's name. His jaw tightened. "Some of them still think I was set up," he said, "that it was political." Was it? He didn't answer. Not directly. Instead, he sighed and said, "I didn't think they'd listen to you. I didn't think you mattered." There it was. Not an apology, but something close. A truth pulled out of the rubble. I walked over to the control station, hit pause on the sim, and turned to face him fully. "I didn't need you to believe me," I said. "I needed you to stop risking lives just to feel powerful." He looked away. There was a long silence before he spoke again. "They gave me the option to resign. Said if I walked away quietly, I could keep my pension. I waited. And I walked." He looked back at me. "They said I should have known better." "No," I said, "you did know better. You just thought no one would dare hold you accountable." Myers shifted his weight. "Was it revenge?" he asked. "What you did," I shook my head. "If it was revenge, I would have let you crash under your own arrogance. I didn't do this to ruin you. I did it to stop the cycle." He nodded slowly. "Then I guess I owe you my silence." "No," I replied. "You owe them your truth." He left without another word, and I stood there, hand resting on the edge of the simulator panel, staring at the empty doorway. There it was. The ghost. Faced. The power dynamic reversed. The man who once erased me now reduced to a footnote in a program built to protect people like the girl I used to be. And all I felt was release. Later that night, Ray asked me if I was okay. I said yes. She tilted her head. "You don't seem victorious." "I'm not trying to win," I said softly. "I'm trying to outlast." She nodded, understood without asking for more. That's how I knew she was ready. In the following days, the Ghost Flight Mentorship Program expanded. We added more candidates, built modules around nonverbal authority psychological resilience, the art of navigating chain of command biases, how to document quietly, when to strike, how to protect each other without putting themselves on the front line too soon. The girls called themselves ghosts, half-jokingly. But it wasn't a joke. They were shadows learning to hold their own shape. And I watched it happen. Not from above. From within. Weeks later, I received a letter. Handwritten. No return address. Inside a photo of Colonel Myers in a volunteer flight training program for veterans with PTSD. And a note that read, "We all fly differently now. You first. Me, finally." I folded the letter and tucked it into the back of my journal, because not every confrontation ends in flames. Some end in clarity. I thought about my father, how he was pushed out before he had a chance to finish his flight, how his voice died out long before drones filled the sky. But now there was a whole squadron of women who wouldn't go unheard. Not on my watch. Not ever again. The confrontation I feared most wasn't Myers. It was becoming so bitter, so hardened, that I forgot why I started flying in the first place. To move, to protect, to prove nothing to anyone but myself. And now I flew for them. For Ray. For every intern who was always more than they were allowed to be. And I promised myself if I ever hear she's just... Again, I'll make sure the sky answers for her. Every Friday morning, I still wake before the sun. It's a habit I picked up in flight school and never lost. There's something about the stillness before the base stirs the hush over the tarmac, the way even the wind seems to hold its breath, that reminds me why I started. And why I stayed. Shadow Class now has 17 cadets, 12 women, 5 men, all of them hand-picked, not by resume, by resilience, by the spark in their eyes when someone doubts them, by the way they stay standing after a hard week of silence, rejection, or ridicule. I don't tell them everything, not all at once. They don't need the legend of Nightshade. They need the tools. They need to know how to write their own stories before someone else writes them out. Some of them ask me about that day, the one with the jet, the flash of the call sign, the colonel's face. I don't deny it. I just smile and say, that wasn't the day I won. That was the day they realized I'd already been here the whole time. And they laugh, not because it's a punchline, because it makes sense. They get it. They've lived parts of it already. I still fly. Every Thursday afternoon, I take up the F-35 for solo drift. Not a mission, not a test, just sky. I like the silence. I like the altitude. I like that up there no one cares what name you were called on the ground, just whether you can hold your trajectory when the turbulence hits. I keep the call sign painted small and understated under the cockpit hatch. Nightshade. A shadow name. A reminder. And I still keep that old contractor badge in a drawer. The one that said Engineering Liaison, Contractor Level 2. The one they used to underestimate me. The one I used to walk right past every firewall they thought would protect them. It's not a trophy. It's a lesson. A month ago, Ray earned her wings. She flew her first sim without assistance, executed a flawless landing under wind shear conditions, and outperformed 3 male candidates in real-time diagnostics. She cried when the mission log cleared. Not because she needed validation, but because no one tried to take it from her this time. After the debrief, I handed her a patch. Black, minimal. Just a faint silver silhouette of a bird inside a radar grid. The official symbol of the Ghost Flight program. She stared at it. Does this mean I'm one of them? No, I said. It means you were never just anything. There's no parade for ghosts, no medals, no documentaries, no viral videos. We move quietly. We leave room for others to be loud. And that's the beauty of it. Because when the system finally listens, when the silence finally breaks, it's not because we screamed. It's because we built a signal too strong to ignore. I don't hate Colonel Myers. I don't think about him much anymore. That's the real ending, not in the confrontation, not in the audit, not in the flight. The real ending is that I don't need him. My story never belonged to him. He was just a page I turned. Last week, one of my new cadets, Elena, asked me, "Do you think we'll ever be done with this fight?" And I told her the truth. No, because the world doesn't run out of arrogance, but we don't run out of altitude. She smiled. Then I guess we just keep flying. Exactly, I said. So here's what I know now. You don't rise by proving others wrong. You rise by knowing you were right all along and walking through every door they said wasn't yours like it always had your name on it. Because you were never just anything. You were always ready. They just didn't see you coming. And when they finally do, it won't be from below. It'll be from the sky, blinding and loud, with your call sign shining in letters they'll never forget. My name is Captain Arden Blake. I'm not your intern. I'm not your secretary. I'm not your footnote. I'm the ghost in your rear view, the one who watched, waited, and flew.